Today's program is funded through an award from the network of the National Library of Medicine Middle Atlantic Region, a partner of the All of Us Research Program. The National Institutes of Health All of Us Research Program aims to build one of the largest, most diverse collections of data of its kind for health research. The goal is to have 1 million or more diverse volunteers nationwide who will sign up and share information over time. The goal of the program is to help researchers understand more about why people get sick or stay healthy. By looking for patterns, researchers may learn more about what affects people's health. The All of Us Research Program will be a resource for many different medical studies and is a cornerstone of the Precision Medicine Initiative. To learn more about the All of Us Research Program, visit www.joinallofus.org/NLM. Medline Plus is the home of consumer health information from the National Library of Medicine. Imagine Medline Plus as your new health information Google. Medline Plus links to trusted resources including National Institutes of Health, Centers for Disease Control, Mayo Clinic, and Nemours Foundation. The health information here is easy to read. It is provided in over 45 languages, and most importantly, there are no advertisements or endorsements ever. Specifically of note is the Plus Health Topics, mental health. If you look at the table of contents, you can quickly skip to subjects like symptoms, diagnosis, find an expert, and more. Medline Plus does not create its own information, but gathers it and organizes it. Rather than doing an internet search, where you go to the Mayo Clinic, then to the American Academy of Pediatrics. The information has already gone through strict standards before being included. The source is always cited. There are also many instructional PDFs available that have been translated to other languages, including things like how to use medical equipment. So if you ever lose your papers, you can find it here.
I'm Erin Joyce. I'm with the Oil Creek Library District. We serve the public libraries in Clarion, Jefferson, and Venango counties. We are very pleased to present this webinar series on mental health. And today's speaker is Jessica Eisenman with Counseling Connections, LLC out of Clarion, Pennsylvania. And I'm going to turn it over to her.
My name is Jess Eisman, and I work for Counseling Connections, LLC here in Clarion. And today I'm going to be talking with you about wellness. So let's jump right in, and I'm going to pull up this presentation and share my screen with you. So specifically today, we're going to talk about wellness during a pandemic and how we can take care of ourselves and each other during these times. So what is wellness to begin with? When we think of wellness, what do we think of? Maybe health, maybe doctors, things like that, doing our best to stay safe. So for the purpose of this presentation, let's define it as pursuing a goal of overall health and stability in several areas of life functioning. And we'll talk in just a second about what those areas of life functioning might be. But let's take a look at the pictures at the bottom of the screen. And what we can see here is the top left, we see a man who looks to be doing some yoga. He's in a yoga position there. Then there's a man that's running, doing some physical exercise. We see some celery, and it looks like a smoothie of some sort. That makes me think of nutrition, health, maybe a healthy diet, that kind of thing. There's a group of people in the bottom left. It looks like they're smiling, they're connecting on some level, doing something there, celebrating something, maybe doing some type of group exercise. And the bottom center, there's this picture of some rocks and maybe a beach in the background. It's kind of hard to tell. It's kind of a relaxing scene. And then we have some candles in the bottom right. So these images kind of represent some peace, serenity, wellness in terms of exercise, nutrition, other people. Let's keep going. So we think about overall health and stability. When we think about that in terms of, or in times of a pandemic, we might have some other images that come to our mind. And if we look at the bottom there, we've added some new images to our health and wellness collection. So there's a person washing their hands with lots of soap, some water. So that's certainly something we've grown very, very accustomed to doing on a regular basis throughout the pandemic. The top center, we have a woman who appears to be, probably one of our more vulnerable populations. And she is getting a shot, perhaps a vaccine, but it looks like a medical professional working with her. She's masked, they're both wearing masks and gloves. So we can kind of see like those images have become a lot more familiar to us, the masks. The top left image appears to be a young boy and another woman who we could say is his mom or caretaker maybe. And they're both masked again and sanitizer. So they're using sanitizer. That's something that we've grown accustomed to as well. Not just ourselves as adults, but also children. And teaching children how hand washing and some of these practices contribute to overall wellness and health, especially during the pandemic. Again, the bottom left, there's a man who's wearing a mask, and people in the center on the bottom, they're separated, probably a couple feet in between them. It appears that they're trying to social distance, right? They're masked, and the bottom right, it appears to be a student in a classroom setting. There's some posters in the background, some other students in the room, and the student is wearing a mask, so we're very familiar with that, and then the other students are as well. But if we can look at the desk where the student is at, there is a space blocked off. There's some tape and there's an X there. So that appears to me like that space is blocked off. We're social distancing, we're wearing the mask, and we're able to participate in the learning environment. So across all environments, whether it's home, whether it's a doctor's office, these people look to be on some form of transportation there, maybe the bottom center, school, no matter where we're at, we've incorporated these different things into our daily lives so that we can maintain some health and stability throughout these times. So if we examine wellness a little bit closer, if you do a Google search on wellness, you'll probably come up with different sites that have 6 elements or dimensions of wellness, and then there's some with 8. For the purpose of today's presentation, we're going to examine the 8 different wellness dimensions. In the top circle, you can see it says physical, the red one. There's physical health. That's certainly a component of wellness. We have emotional health, and we have a spiritual dimension to us, which certainly contributes to wellness. Financial aspects of our lives that definitely affect our wellness level. An intellectual dimension of wellness, occupational, a social dimension of wellness. And the last one is environmental, and we don't often think about that one, but we're definitely going to highlight it today. So the first one we're going to take a look at is physical wellness. So when we define that, like when we think of our physical wellness and health, we might think of nutrition, balanced eating, water intake, all of those things, probably some physical activity, exercise. But also it's really important to consider our sleep quality and duration, whether we're able to sleep and have a restful night's sleep. It's one thing to lay in bed all night and toss and turn and, think about things, worry about things, up and down to the restroom, whatever it might be. But there's a difference between that and then a quality night's sleep where we're able to get our REM cycle or REM sleep in and that kind of thing. The duration, are we able to get a full recommended amount of hours? Maybe we'll say 8 hours is kind of typical. Are we able to get that? A lot of us are probably not, depending on our situations and what we have going on. So that sleep is very, very important because it affects everything. It affects our emotions, our physical well-being, and then it trickles down to our social interactions as well, and our families. So sleep is certainly an important part of the physical aspect of wellness. We have on there alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. If we're engaging in a lot of drinking, we're smoking tobacco or chewing, using other types of recreational drugs, then that might that might affect our physical wellness to some degree, sure. And it can also reach a point where we find a dependence on these things, or we become addicted to these things. So that can certainly affect our physical wellness. And the last thing listed there is attention to physical health needs. So if we have a physical health need, such as maybe like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, and we need to be seen by a doctor on a regular basis to monitor those things, our attention to those physical health needs is very important. If we're prescribed a medication, are we taking that medication? Things like that. So this is very important, right? Physical wellness can definitely affect all of the other areas of wellness that we might experience. So let's highlight a couple of these things in a little more detail. Nutrition and balanced eating. In times of COVID, are we able to find the resources that we need for physical wellness? There was a time when we were quarantined and we were on shutdown, right? Lockdown. And so we weren't supposed to leave our houses, our homes, unless we needed to go get our basic needs taken care of, right? Like go to the grocery store, an emergent health concern, things like that. Essential, unless it was an essential reason to leave. So perhaps, we weren't able to get the things that we needed. I don't know. But I want to let you know that there's resources in the community that are working to meet people's needs throughout the pandemic and on a regular basis as well. The Hope Rising Church in Clarion, they've had at least 2 food distributions this month. And I think that actually more than that, I think, but I know of 2 food distributions that they've had where they were actually giving away boxes of food, and it was it was perishable food. Usually when you hear of a food giveaway, food donations, as perishable items or non-perishables, I'm sorry. So the church was actually giving away perishables like chicken and eggs and yogurt, milk, and that kind of stuff that is perishable, but is also probably higher in nutritional value than some of the other things. So there's resources in the community that are working to help us. That's just one example. Physical activity and exercise. So it might be, we might have had some change with the pandemic and how we can access these things. So certain things shut down for a while. The gyms had to shut down for a while. The YMCA in Clarion, that's a great place to go and do any number of different exercise well-being activities. But we had to follow the regulations, and we had to make sure we were being safe during that heightened time of quarantine. So we weren't able to access those things. And some people, depending on your comfort level and your health concerns that you might have, your family, our comfort levels with the pandemic, it's a spectrum, right? It spans from people who are very, very comfortable going out and doing their thing, and people who are not comfortable, people who are very concerned about their health and wellness and the wellness of others around them too. So anywhere on that spectrum we might be. And so some people still might not be comfortable going into those situations. I want to let you know that there are resources online available. For example, Kristen Cochran, she has a site called Anywhere Yoga. If you get on Facebook or you do a Google search and look for Anywhere Yoga, look for Kristen Cochran, she does an online portion of that where people can participate from their homes. And she'll guide the exercise, and people can join no matter where they're at, no matter what their health situation is. So there's resources like that out there right now, so that we can all participate in things like that. She's also doing a Saturday morning kids version of yoga in person, and that's in Brookville, I believe. So you'll have to do a search on Anywhere Yoga with Kristen Cochran. That's just one example, but there are many nutrition fitness experts who are starting to put these things virtually online so that we can participate anywhere. When we talk about alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, so we're going to get to, in the next section, we're going to talk about emotional wellness. And sometimes when we have increased stress, a lot of people have experienced increased stress during the pandemic. We might turn to certain things for comfort, reassurance, to make ourselves feel better, right? To bring that stress level down. And so sometimes people do turn to these things, right? Alcohol, smoking, other types of drugs. One of the most popular topics of conversation now in that arena is the medical marijuana situation. And we have the ability now to get a prescription card, right? So that we can access medical marijuana if that is something that you're interested in, that your doctor recommends for you. So I want to highlight that there's people that use these substances in a healthy way, right? The prescription drugs that we might be prescribed, if we're taking them as they're prescribed and we're using them appropriately. There's people who use alcohol or tobacco in moderation, right? But then there seems to be a line where it deepens into a dependence. We can become dependent on a substance like that. And I want to highlight that even though medical marijuana is a prescription that you can get, if it's something your doctor recommends for you, that certainly we can definitely become dependent on that as well. And it can be, we can kind of abuse it or use it too much, just like any other prescription. So there's things that we need to be mindful of in that arena. And there's experts in the community who do focus on this stuff. There's recovery groups in the community. There's AA, NA. They're doing a great job of, some of them put their meetings virtual online so that people can participate. And SendClear is one of the main places in Clarion County that deals with the drug and alcohol situation. But if you are a loved one who's struggling with an addiction situation, there are resources, even through the pandemic, that you can access. So people were doing telehealth now. That's one of the main things I wanted to highlight in this presentation, is the availability of telehealth services. And probably a lot of people are familiar with that in the physical health arena, like some doctors' offices, a lot of them have offered telehealth appointments. If you don't have transportation, or if you're not comfortable going into a doctor's office, we can meet with our physician online sometimes. Well, SendClear and a lot of drug and alcohol facilities, a lot of mental health facilities have offered some online appointments, telehealth appointments. And insurances have been covering that for the most part. Now it's starting to change a little bit with the new year. So if that's something you're interested in, certainly you want to contact your insurance company, look at the back of your insurance card and call that number to see whether your insurance is actually covering the telehealth services at this point, or to what percentage. But if you or a loved one is struggling with the drug situation, a dependence, an addiction, certainly you can call these places up. SendClear would be more than happy to schedule an appointment with you and work through some of that stuff, whether it's on telehealth online, on a phone. You know, these telehealth appointments have become so convenient. We can actually pull them up on a smartphone and have our appointments right on the cell phone, no matter where we're at. It's incredibly convenient. So I guess in some ways, the availability of telehealth has made it more accessible. We can access these services a lot easier than maybe we could before. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. Excuse me. Emotional wellness. When we think about emotional wellness, there are strategies for managing and expressing our feelings. And we also might think about just a simple awareness of how our thoughts can contribute to our feelings, which then may in turn influence our actions, right? If we are thinking a lot of self-defeating thoughts, a lot of negative self-talk, you know, I can't do this, and things are so overwhelming, it's frustrating, nothing is going right in my life. If we think of things like that, likely we're probably able to feel a little down or maybe a little discouraged, things like that. That might influence our actions, you know, and the way we speak with others. We might not be as happy or as open to dialogue, that kind of stuff. So certainly our thoughts, the way we think about things, can contribute to our feelings, which then may influence our actions with other people. So in terms of emotional wellness, when we look at these images down here, we have a little teddy bear closing his eyes, right? And so I think of children. children during the pandemic. What are they experiencing during this time? And how might we be able to kind of reach out and help them? We have a woman who has some headphones on. So maybe one of her strategies for managing her feelings and her emotions, maybe she's listening to music. Maybe that keeps her going, right? It looks like another woman with her hands, with her head and her face in her hands, and she's having a hard time, it appears. Maybe some stress. You know, we're not sure. Maybe some stuff going on in her life. And then we have a child surrounded by dinosaurs, looks pretty happy, looks excited. So one of the things to be mindful of when we're taking care of ourselves and other people is the ability to be present in the moment and to observe what's going on around us, right? To observe how children are acting and behaving, what people's facial expressions look like. We call that affect, right? What people's affect looks like. You can tell by someone's face, you know, if they're feeling sad, if they're having a hard time, right? Or maybe if somebody's happy. You can see by the woman's smile, she's listening to music, that she appears to be in a good place at this point. But when we think of emotional wellness, we need to think about how we can help ourselves and then how we can help others. One of the strategies for managing emotional wellness is what we call grounding exercise. There's a lot of research that's been done on meditation, on relaxation skills, grounding skills for times of stress. And certainly during the pandemic, I would imagine that a lot of us have experienced increased amount of stress in one way or another. So we're going to walk through just real quick an activity on grounding strategies for stress. The website is here so that if you need to pause this YouTube video and write down the website, if you want to go to this at a later time, certainly you can do that. The website is therapistaid.com. It's a website that's really common for counselors to use when they're trying to link people with resources and worksheets and activities. Okay, so this grounding exercise for a limited time is actually free for all users to try. So this is something that you don't have to pay for. If you have any trouble at all accessing these resources, please contact a counselor. They'd be happy to give you access to the resources. My information is on the first slide. You're more than welcome to contact me if you have any trouble and check that out. Okay, we're going to go ahead and launch the tool. Excuse me. Okay, let's see here. So this is a grounding exercise, and people use this exercise in heightened times of stress. Some people experience panic attacks, and this is one of the exercises that can kind of bring us down and ground us in our reality. It brings awareness to the things around us, our five senses. Okay, and so we're just going to jump right in here and listen to a portion of this, not the whole thing.
Grounding is a powerful technique that uses distraction to help you manage your emotions. We will practice 3 types of grounding today: mental, physical, and soothing. During this exercise, you should sit upright in a chair with your feet on the ground while keeping your eyes open. I will ask many questions during this exercise. If you are comfortable doing so, answer them out loud. If not, you may answer them to yourself. Okay, let's begin. First, we will practice mental grounding. Let's review some simple facts about the present moment. Where are you right now? What time is it? What day of the week is it? What colors are you wearing? Now, think about any uncomfortable feelings that have been bothering you. Don't judge them or try to change them. Just notice the feeling because they're not.
Okay, so we're going to go back to our presentation, but I wanted to give you just a glimpse of what some of the resources out there are. And there's a lot of apps you can download on your cell phones or a computer to manage stress and to do relaxation. There's a lot of guided imagery, somebody talking through a situation. Like for some of us really like the beach, right? But we haven't been able to be there in a year or so because of the pandemic and maybe other reasons as well. So for me, I like to close my eyes and just picture a beach scene. But there's also tools and resources out there where a guided voice like this will walk you through your 5 senses, imagining that you were actually sitting on the beach. And you can feel the hot sand, and you can hear the waves crashing. You can smell the salty air, that kind of stuff. And so it's helpful. It helps us because one of the main things we want to do is distract our minds, because our minds become so overwhelmed and saturated with stress and with the life stuff that we have going on. We want to kind of trick our minds into thinking about something else and experiencing something else. So that's one great tool that you can use, the grounding techniques. If you do a search, there's certainly more apps out there. There's an app called Calm that I believe some of my clients are using and have recommended. It's an app called Calm, and there's different resources for meditation on there, relaxation. I wanted to highlight also, so with addiction, right, sometimes we have healthy and unhealthy coping skills, right? Certainly using something like a grounding strategy would be a healthy coping skill. Reaching out and talking to somebody about things that are going on, that would be a healthy coping skill. But sometimes we turn to substances, or sometimes, you know, people engage in unhealthy coping, self-harm, things like that. So I was told recently of an app. It's called I Am Sober. And when we think of sobriety, probably we would think about substances and being free from substances. But this person was using the app I Am Sober because she was somebody who coped by cutting herself. And so she was able to use this app to kind of track the period of time that she was able to remain free from that behavior. And certainly people could use this for substance use or any goal that we might try to set where we're trying to separate ourselves, free ourselves from some unhealthy behavior. It helps count the day and lets you know how many days, and I think even seconds, that you've been free from a behavior. It also, I believe, gives encouraging affirmations and words each day. So that app is called I Am Sober. That's just one that I've heard that's helpful. On that same, before we move on to a different area of wellness, we want to certainly mention that if you or a loved one or anybody that you come across is talking about suicide and is just really in a dark place and wanting to end it, feelings of hopelessness, certainly we want to reach out to them and make sure people have the resources to get help. And that might mean sitting with them and having a conversation. Hey, I'm really concerned about you. I'm wondering if you would like me to help you. Contact some people. There's a national suicide awareness number, and if you Google national suicide awareness, that number will pop right up. Even I think if you Google the word suicide, that's one of the first things that come up is that suicide hotline. And certainly we have crisis workers that work in our counties that would be available to help us in times of really intense stress. That we can access as well. All right, we're moving on to an area called spiritual wellness. Spiritual wellness, if we think about it, it can mean meaning and purpose, how we derive meaning for ourselves. What's the purpose of life? That kind of stuff. These deeper, maybe existential thoughts. It could also mean our values, what we find to be of value in life. Do we value work? Do we value family? Do we value behaving a certain way? Our principles, our belief systems. It could be seeking our spirituality while respecting others' belief systems as well. So we certainly have been reminded that here in rural Western Pennsylvania and probably across the nation, we've been reminded lately of how polarized our belief systems can be. And certainly that would encompass an area of religion. You know, religion and spirituality are different. Spirituality does not have to mean religiousness or churches. It's a little bit bigger than that. But religion certainly is an aspect of spiritual wellness for some people. And as a counselor, I've seen throughout the pandemic, people kind of diving into this a little bit more. You know, when in times of stress, in times of uncertainty, people kind of start thinking about meaning and purpose, values and principles, kind of bigger picture stuff sometimes. So if you look at the images, you know, there's a candle, some flowers, nature. Nature can certainly be a way to connect with our spiritual selves. We see some other religious symbols and a man who looks to be maybe meditating or praying. We also have an area of wellness called financial wellness. And that will certainly encompass the ability to monetarily provide for ourselves and for other people. This area, this dimension of wellness would encompass work and maybe debt, those kinds of topics. We see in the images there, bottom left is, it looks like two hands under a table exchanging cash. So that, you know, that's something that, excuse me, we may or may not have experienced working under the table if we haven't been able to secure work during a pandemic. You see somebody's hands in the bottom right, sorting out coins, maybe counting them or sorting them. And it looks like the hands of somebody who's aging. And so perhaps during the pandemic, we think about our aging population. We think about those who are most vulnerable. And I wonder, you know, how has this affected them financially? We don't know. We don't know, but in times like this, there's uncertainty. And so, but there are resources. There are people who are willing to help us figure these things out. And certainly the job situation, right? If we go and explore Clarion, we can see a list of jobs that we may or may not be qualified for. But a lot of people have experienced job stress or financial stress in one way or another throughout the pandemic. So that's a very real thing that we're experiencing as a community. At the end of this presentation, we're going to walk through some resources on a website that'll also highlight some financial resources, some work resources for everybody. I want to throw out a quick comment about debt. There are also some programs that have been studied and have been shown to really help people get out from under debt. And one of the most popular ones is a man called Dave Ramsey. He has, I believe it's called Total Money Makeover, but he has a program and people have found success using that program to get out from under debt. I believe he also has a podcast that people listen to. I first heard of it a couple years ago, but since then I've heard a lot more about it. This is something that people are accessing to try and help get out from under some debt. There's an aspect of our wellness called intellectual wellness that encompasses learning across the lifespan, creativity, critical thinking, and certainly education. So when we think about our own intellectual wellness, the word intellectual, we kind of just maybe think about school or younger kids going through school, that kind of stuff. But really, our intellectual wellness affects everybody across the lifespan. It doesn't matter how old you are. Being able to engage in activities that are maybe promote our critical thinking or give us a chance to be creative and use different areas of our brain that maybe we don't use on a regular basis. Occupational wellness. So in the financial wellness dimension, we highlighted that work is certainly a part of our financial wellness, but we have an entire other dimension called occupational wellness. So we can think about this in terms of our work, right? The work that we do, is it fulfilling? Maybe it's not a job per se, maybe it's a meaningful activity that we do in the community. Maybe we volunteer somewhere, or maybe we are a homemaker and we take pride in making sure the home is taken care of, the grandkids are taken care of, you know, that kind of thing. But whatever we're doing in life as sort of an occupation or an activity that provides us meaning, that would be included in this dimension of wellness. You can see in the image there, the top one, there's a man wearing a mask and he has a laptop, it appears. I'm not certain where he is. It doesn't quite look like a home setting, but it looks like we could assume things from this picture. Certainly, we could assume that maybe he's doing some work in a remote setting. A lot of people, we've had to switch to remote settings, working from home, or working from a different place than we're used to during the pandemic. There's a image in the bottom left of the screen. It looks like a person who's using a drill. They've got some heavy duty gloves on there. It looks like they're using a drill, doing some type of project there. So if we compare these two images and we think about the pandemic, there are some of us who have been able, our occupations have been able to be flexible. We can work from home. We can make adaptations to make it work. There are some people's occupations, right? Some of us have occupations where we are not able to work from home. That doesn't make sense. And so our jobs may have been affected throughout the pandemic. Maybe we had to quarantine for a certain amount of time. Was that paid? Was it not paid? You know, were there resources available to us during that time? What changed for us? Were there layoffs? All of these things we've encountered during the pandemic. Excuse me. And again, I'm going to highlight some additional resources at the end of the presentation for job searching, that kind of thing. But when we think about helping ourselves, helping others, this is certainly an area that may have been changed during the pandemic. Again, the bottom right picture, it looks like a person who I'm assuming may or may not be working in a restaurant or a bar. There's some cups, some glasses, dishwashing maybe, or just stacking. So certainly the restaurants and the bars in the area, places like that, have experienced some shift with the pandemic. So if we're thinking about helping ourselves, helping others, and we're able to do this, one of the things that we can do is support the local businesses, the local shops, the small mom and pop shops, you know, the local restaurants, that aren't maybe necessarily the chain ones. If we're able to do that, and we can, that's certainly one way that we can help our community out a little bit. Let's move on to an area called social wellness. And this dimension, it encompasses our relationships and our communication with other people, our sense of connectedness and belonging with a group of people. That might mean our family, it might mean our friends, our colleagues, our people that we work with on a daily basis. It also, this dimension includes time for leisure and fun and connecting. So if we think historically how we've been able to do these things, and then we think of how we shifted during the pandemic, there's been some changes, right? The bottom right looks like a concert. There's a big crowd of people. There's some exciting stuff going on there. That's something that we haven't seen a whole lot during the pandemic, right? We've had to social distance, and a lot of those things have been adapted or haven't been able to happen. So, but a lot of artists and entertainment folks have been able to do some virtual tours, some virtual concerts, drive-ins, that kind of stuff. So we can access these things if we're able to. The top picture there looks like a man, woman, and child. Maybe we would think of a family, and certainly our family could encompass some socialization, a sense of belonging. The bottom left picture, I think maybe at a playground there. And as the weather's breaking here, hopefully we can get outdoors a little bit more and find ways to connect with each other, whether it's taking the kids to a playground or taking a walk. If we know a person who is feeling socially isolated in our neighborhood, maybe we can get out, pay attention to that, and invite them to go on a walk with us if we're able to. I think the key, one of the keys there is knowing that throughout all of this, we can't fix each other's problems. We can't fix it. And we don't have to. We don't have to understand other people's concerns. We don't have to agree with other people's beliefs or perspectives. All we have to do to be a support to someone is to just be present with them, to listen, take a walk, have a non-judgmental approach with them, because that can be something that's really lacking at times. And it can be so meaningful for somebody who's isolated or going through some dark times, just to have somebody there supporting them, just to know that they have somebody in life that they can reach out to and talk if they need to go on a walk with, to maybe have a dinner if you're able, those kinds of things. But we don't have to be fixers. We don't have to fix other people's problems. We just certainly have to be present. We don't have to understand what they're going through. We don't have to agree with their beliefs and their perspectives on things. All we simply have to do is just be there as a support and be non-judgmental. Okay. So the next thing with the social dimension of wellness encompasses relationships. So our relationships with other people. So we want to take a quick look. The counseling center at this university did a nice job of making a succinct list of some healthy and unhealthy relationship behaviors. So let's take a look at that. Okay, we're going to start with important aspects of a healthy relationship. So these things we're about to talk about are seen in healthy relationships, right? We see equality, where you and your partner, family, or friends should view each other as equals. You know, there's no power dynamic going on. People aren't better than other people. We're not using people for personal gain, that kind of thing. We're equals. An element of respect, certainly in healthy relationships, respecting people as human beings, unique individuals, and don't have to be exactly like us. It includes the respect and dignity of people, seeing value in each other. Communication, the way we talk with each other, we should feel comfortable expressing our thoughts, being honest, and being able to share our ideas and our feelings. And we don't have to always agree on them. We don't have to always understand. But being able to have a safe environment where we can talk and communicate about these things in a constructive way. A lot of couples enter counseling because they really struggle with communication. And oftentimes we even find that couples later in life, you know, as they're moving beyond the childbearing years, their kids are teenagers, they're raised, they're graduating in college or off on their own, they're married. And so these couples find themselves not being able to communicate because they really haven't done it. Maybe they've been in survival mode for 18, 20 years, taking care of just things that need done. So they enter therapy then, and a lot of things we work on is communication skills. I mentioned earlier in the presentation the availability of telehealth services for addiction. There's certainly telehealth services for mental health right now as well, certainly. I have a private practice, Counseling Connections, and we are offering telehealth services right now, but a lot of the other providers in the area are also offering those services too. And that, as I said, again, insurances, a lot of them are paying for at least a portion of telehealth, maybe all of it. For a while, they were waiving the entire cost of a counseling session and paying for it, so that families and individuals could get the help that they need, some resources. So if you or If somebody in your life is thinking about counseling, certainly reach out, whether you're able to go in person or whether you're more comfortable at home using technology to communicate. Either way, those resources are available. Reach out. There's a lot of resources in the community for that. Okay, so trust, being able to trust other people. That trust is huge these days, right? But it's a key essential piece to a healthy relationship, and it's established over time. It's established by showing consistency in our words and our actions. We can begin to trust people through their behavior and what they show to us, what they say to us. Responsibility and accountability, being responsible, accountable to our partners or our families, our friends, not placing blame on others, owning up to our mistakes, that kind of thing. Not having to constantly check in or report to the other person. Support, we're able to encourage each other and support each other, have our own separate hobbies and things that we do, and then be able to connect and communicate, support each other in activities that we do together as well. Being able to support each other in difficult times, the good times and the bad times, right? Honesty is very important. Boundaries. There's a book called Boundaries, and I think there's actually boundaries with kids, boundaries with at work, with parents. There's a couple different boundaries books, but I highly recommend them. Let's see here. It's John Townsend and Henry Cloud. Henry Cloud and John Townsend. They wrote the Boundaries book. So if you do a Google search, excuse me, that there is some good information. It is written from a Christian perspective, I believe. So there's a religious aspect to it, but the material itself is very psychologically grounded and helpful. Some other good resources, Leslie Bernick, she talks a lot about relationships. If you could do a search on Leslie Bernick, you'll come across a wealth of information on her website on relationships, distinguishing between healthy, unhealthy, what might be emotionally destructive or abusive. If you know you yourself or a friend, a family member who you believe is in an abusive relationship, there's a safe passages and safe and local in Clarion here that can help. Reach out to a counselor, reach out to crisis, call a crisis number if it's a life-threatening situation or if things are getting pretty bad. Safe and passages are resources for that as well. And non-threatening behavior certainly would be a healthy element. So on the flip side, let's take a look at some of the things that make that are components of unhealthy relationships. A lack of communication, certainly if we're not able to talk about difficult topics, there's a lot of misunderstandings, engaging in arguments, things like that can lead to an unhealthy relationship. Dishonesty, disrespect, a dependence. Let's talk about dependence for a second, because every person deserves a certain level of independence and our autonomy, being able to do things without the other person per se. But if somebody is completely dependent on another person financially, emotionally, psychologically, it could indicate an unhealthy relationship. On the flip side of that, there's some of us that are caretakers and we love to care for other people, and that is incredibly needed in our society, right? In our community. But there's also people who try to fix everyone's problem. And sometimes that can't be a possibility, right? And sometimes it can even be enabling to the point where, let's use an example of addiction. If somebody in a family is struggling with addiction, and the enabler, the fixer, might try to remove all of the alcohol from the house or cover up for this person when they get in trouble with a job or the law. And so that type of behavior, while it feels like helping, is actually harming the person with addiction as it's enabling. And so while we're talking about dependence, I wanted to bring that up because there's also something called codependence. And if you're interested in that, If you do a search on codependence, you'll likely find a book that will pop up. It's called Codependent No More. And that's an awesome resource for learning a little bit about our relationships with other people. Certainly, if jealousy is a part, manipulation, criticism, isolation, constant fighting, controlling behaviors, these would certainly indicate an unhealthy relationship. Again, there are counselors in the community who can help us work through these things. If you do a search on counselors in Clarion County, there's a ton that pop up, right? You have some of the larger nonprofit agencies. You have Family Psychological Associates, Clarion Family Therapy, Clarion Behavioral Health, and those agencies specifically, they also have psychiatric providers that might be able to provide a psychiatric evaluation or medication to accompany that. You also have a lot of independent providers in the community as well with a private practice. And so checking out your options, check out the options. If you find a counselor that you don't click with, there's certainly many more of us in the community. So don't give up, be encouraged, and keep on pursuing that, whether it's through telehealth or whether it's an in-person visit. And our last area is environmental wellness. This is something that we don't often think about, but this is a sense of taking care of the environment around us. Do we have access to clean air, water, food, time with nature? We can see some of the images there. That I particularly like the one in the bottom right. It looks like a plant of some sort. And somehow that plant is like popping up and growing and flourishing with cement all around it. So it's popped up through a crack. And this is just kind of representative to me. It speaks to me on resilience, being able to thrive or experience wellness in uncertain times. So again, time with nature can be very important. Being able to get outside and get that fresh air, that sunlight, that vitamin D, finding ways to connect with other people in the community. One thing before we go on to the last the last resource I want to review, I wanted to mention back with the relationships. There's an app that was recently recommended to me through one of my clients, and it's an app called Agape, AGAPE, and I believe that's like a Greek word for love. I think different types of love, but Agape is the app, and it's a relationship tool, and it's really neat because when couples have difficulties communicating, that can be a tool to actually communicate in different ways, like through certain topics, check-ins with each other, that kind of thing, because we often lead busy lives, and we don't often carve out time for each other. So this app was recommended to me. Again, it's called Agape, and AGAPE, just another resource out there. Okay, let's take a look at this government website. Is called SAMHSA, and they have a guide on wellness here. It's a step-by-step guide to wellness. Okay, so as we scroll down through, we can see this gives us a nice overview of wellness in a lot of the different areas. Actually, yes, all of the areas we talked about today are again highlighted in this handout. And if you need to pause the YouTube video and write down that website, certainly go ahead and do that. That way you can bring it up on your own computer and you can read through it at your leisure. But it talks about the 8 dimensions of wellness. It talks about creating balance in our lives. If we think about it, these certain areas of wellness, they're all connected, right? Let's go back to the PowerPoint real quick here and take a look. We have a financial area of wellness, right? It's the blue one, but bottom right, blue one. Okay. If we are struggling financially, certainly that might affect our emotions, right? It could affect our physical well-being if we're not able to pay for doctor's appointments or get the physical health care that we need to get because of insurance difficulties, financial difficulties. Could it affect us socially or occupationally? Certainly. These are all interconnected, right? So that's something that we want to be mindful of. Okay, we're going to go back to our website here with the handout. So when we think about creating balance, if we're spending all of our time focusing on one area of our wellness, then maybe other areas are being neglected or aren't really thriving at that time. So if we're spending all of our focus and energy on the occupational area and work, and maybe our social relationships or our family relationships are suffering, maybe we're not taking care of ourselves physically the way we should. Maybe we're not carving out time for exercise, connecting with others, or fun, nutrition. So it's very, very important to strike a balance with our wellness. And this article, it does go into detail if you're able to read it, and it talks more about that. Embracing support from other people. You know, that's a good point, because sometimes it's hard for us to accept support. Sometimes we don't want others to know what's going on with us. But in times like these, we can really find support in each other. Talking with somebody who's been through similar things, a support group. There's support groups out there for grief. Again, I believe the Hope Rising Church has a support group for grief. If we've lost somebody, certainly with mental health, addiction, trauma, pain, different topics in our lives, we can connect with others and help process through these issues and help heal. So valuing routines and habits. Once the pandemic was in full force last spring and summer, we heard a lot about routine, habit, like creating structure in our lives, even though there might not be any, or there might be a lot less than when we were able to go to work every day, or the kids going to school in person every day. That created a lot of structure in our lives. But when we're not able to have that, excuse me, then it's important to create structure of some kind, because our brains, our bodies thrive on structure, whether we realize it or not. It might sound really relaxing to lay on the couch in front of the TV all day, but really our bodies they thrive on some type of structure and routine. Maybe we try to get up at the same time, go to sleep at the same time each day. That can be really, really healthy routine in terms of creating a good sleep habit, getting our quality amount of sleep in each night. Okay, so what I like about this wellness handout is that it goes through each area and it defines it. Let's start with physical wellness. It goes through and it defines physical wellness, nutrition, physical activity, sleep, and then it gives you questions to think about. Do you have healthy food? Or is your diet aligned with nutritional values, that kind of stuff? Physical activity, are you taking the stairs or the elevator, that kind of thing? Are you making time, if you work from home especially, are you making time to get some type of physical activity? Sleep 7 to 8 hours, that kind of thing. So on the left column, it targets different areas of physical wellness. Then it gives you questions to think about for yourself. And then the last side, the side on the far right, that is where the resources are. And I wanted to highlight this because it gives you areas of focus. If you want to look at nutrition, there's a link to the choosemyplate.gov or foodpyramid.com. There's information out there. So this is a nice, succinct resource that has a lot of different links to other places, other websites within each domain of wellness. There's a fitness, myfitnesspal.com for tracking tools for fitness. Let's see here. Smoking cessation, there's a resource for that. And some 12-step groups like AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. Narcotics Anonymous. Excuse me, can see that with my physical wellness, I'm experiencing some allergies and a cough. So as we look down through the next slide, the next page, it has a space for you to reflect and think, okay, what will I do and what do I need? So if we're looking to improve, say, physical wellness in the area of nutrition, well, what will I do? Maybe I will strive to eat more vegetables each day of the week. So setting a specific goal, what do I need? Maybe I need to reduce the amount of junk food I have in the house so that I'm more likely to turn toward a vegetable than a potato chip. Some strategies, right? But this is a nice guide because it gives us room and space to reflect and think a little bit on how we could improve different areas of wellness. And I specifically want to highlight the, going back to intellectual wellness here, they give a resource for games for the brain. You know, when we talk about strengthening our brains, you know, a lot of times when we get caught up in watching TV or scrolling through social media, our brains feel like they're stimulated, but in reality, it's not really stimulating them to the extent that it could be here. There's games for the brain that help us kind of think and build up our brain power, so to speak. And these things can be important, especially if we're trying to ward off some of the issues that we might experience in later adulthood, Alzheimer's, dementia, these kinds of things. Wellness right now can go a long way. Implementing wellness techniques right now can go a long way toward preventative illnesses in the future. But I wanted to specifically highlight here some financial resources and some occupational resources. It says, if you happen to be receiving Social Security disability and you're concerned about how much you can actually work without losing your benefits, there are resources here. There's website links right here on this handout that will take you there and help you figure it out. If you're exploring sites like careerbuilder.com, monster.com, LinkedIn, those are certainly resources for finding jobs. Again, Explore Clarion has lists of jobs, the Derek, that kind of thing online. They have jobs there, but there's also the career link in town. That's incredibly helpful with that. Okay, financial wellness and environmental wellness. Okay. So if you get an idea, as we're scrolling down through, you can get an idea of this handout and different areas that it breaks down, and then it kind of prompts you to reflect on what you might need. So this is it's a nice resource. Oops, we passed the occupational. Okay, so yeah, the Social Security website, socialsecurity.gov, and then it has some additional things on the end of the website there that you can type in. Click that link and it'll take you there. And then the job websites as well. So that concludes the presentation that I have for you here today. And again, I just encourage you to take away some key points, right? In order to support somebody, whether it's a family member, a loved one, somebody in your community that might be struggling through the pandemic, or in general, in a non-pandemic time, what we don't have to understand what's going on with them, and we certainly don't have to agree with it or their beliefs or perspectives. All we have to do is be present, show up, call on the phone, show that we care. We don't have to solve the problem. We can help link them to resources, maybe if they need some help with that. Again, another takeaway from this presentation is that there are telehealth resources out there, whether it's for addiction, whether it's for your physical health, your mental health. There are telehealth resources out there so that you can be able to speak with professionals without leaving the comfort of your home or the safety or security of your home. And then maybe a last takeaway is that there's an increasing number of apps and online services available, you know, the Anywhere Yoga the online services that are available since the pandemic. So you're welcome to, if you have any further questions, feel free to contact me or the library, certainly. So I want to thank you for sticking through and watching this today, and be well.